A general becomes a gladiator after being betrayed by the emperor's son and begins his path of revenge. That is why today on the Summarizer, Gladiator. The movie starts in the winter of 180 AD, when Emperor Marcus Aurelius's campaign was about to end and just one group of warriors stood between the empire and its promise of peace. At this point, we're taken to that place where General Maximus is preparing for the enemy's response, under the watchful eyes of Marcus Aurelius from the highest point in the forest. After meeting with his fellow General Quintus, they spot the messenger they sent, but he's been decapitated, leaving everyone bracing for the signal from Maximus to go to battle. Once everything is set, the general gives the signal, and the battle begins. While the soldiers advance from the front, the cavalry flanks the warriors from behind, taking them down quickly. After a fierce struggle, the Romans emerge victorious, though both sides suffer heavy losses. Meanwhile, Marcus Aurelius's children, Commodus and Lucilla, are summoned to the camp where he is to receive his message. Neither of them knows what he'll say, though Commodus assumes his father will name him the next emperor. Upon arriving at camp, Commodus learns his father is still on the battlefield, so he heads there. Meanwhile, Caesar thanks Maximus for his victory, and the general listens, only asking to be allowed to go home. Then Commodus arrives and sees that all the soldiers are honoring Maximus, so he approaches his father and congratulates him, vowing to sacrifice many oxen in his name. But Caesar tells him he lost the war, and that he should thank Maximus for winning the battle. Commodus obeys, and when he tries to lead his father away, Caesar refuses, choosing instead to ride on horseback. In the tent, Marcus Aurelius tells his daughter that she would have made a great general if she were a man, mentioning that she must help her brother as he'll need her support. The next day, Caesar summons Maximus, and the weary emperor hints that his time is short, and he wants to be remembered as a good ruler. He asks Maximus to be Rome's protector after his death to restore power to the people and end corruption. Maximus refuses, saying he needs to be with his family, and asks why he doesn't name Commodus as emperor. Marcus Aurelius admits he knows his son well and that he shouldn't rule, adding that Maximus is the son he wished he had. Hours later, Maximus prays for his family, knowing he'll be staying there longer. Just then, his servant Cicero arrives, telling him they won't be going home for now. Meanwhile, Commodus enters his father's room, where Marcus Aurelius informs him he won't be emperor and that all power will pass to Maximus, ensuring Rome will return to a republic. This doesn't sit well with Commodus. Resentful, he tells his father that although he had qualities he disliked, he always wanted to please him. Marcus Aurelius shows that his failures as a father caused Commodus's flaws, extending a hand for forgiveness. Commodus hugs him but then begins suffocating him, ending his life. Later, General Quintus arrives at Maximus's tent, saying that the emperor needs him. But upon arrival, Commodus tells him his father died in his sleep and asks for his loyalty, extending a hand. Maximus doesn't take it and leaves the tent. Lucilla then approaches the new emperor, and after some slaps, she accepts him as Caesar. Meanwhile, Maximus puts on his armor and orders Cicero to gather two of his companions, but then Quintus appears, and though Maximus insists the emperor was murdered, Quintus orders his arrest. Realizing what's happening, Maximus asks Quintus to promise to take care of his family. Quintus merely replies that they'll meet him in eternity. At dawn, the soldiers take Maximus to his execution site, ordering him to kneel. Maximus asks to die with honor, and as the soldier moves to behead him, the general reacts, fighting and killing all the soldiers. Hours later, he sets up camp after traveling, thinking of his family and asking his ancestors to watch over them. Days pass, and he grows more exhausted, while in his homeland, a group of horsemen comes and attacks his family. Upon reaching his home, Maximus finds his wife and child's lifeless bodies at the entrance. Mourning that he wasn't with them, he buries them and falls asleep from exhaustion. Hours later, some men find him and take him in a cart with a caravan of merchants and slaves. One of them, Juba, urges him to hold on, applying antiseptic to his wound to help it heal. Days later, they arrive in a Roman province, and a merchant looks for a man named Proximo to sell the new slaves he brought. Upon seeing Maximus, Proximo notices he has a legion tattoo and is now a deserter. Later, Proximo tells the group he'll train them to be gladiators. When he calls Maximus, he doesn't fight back, so his companion Hadrian punches him. Soon after, they're all taken to a small Colosseum, where Proximo tells them that if they kill, they'll be loved, but assures them that in the end everyone dies. The gate opens, and the gladiators begin fighting the warriors, with only a few surviving, Juba, Maximus, and a handful of others. Later, the emperor arrives in Rome, welcomed by senators, including Gracchus, who disagrees with Commodus's rule. When they gather, Gracchus points out that the city faces many issues that need resolving, but the emperor silences him, saying he knows his people better, since he understands they live in luxury. Gracchus challenges him, asking if he's embraced a leper. This angers Commodus, and Lucilla steps in asking Gracchus for the list, telling him her brother will do what's necessary. Later, Lucilla speaks with her brother, who begins to despise the Senate as the people seem to listen to them more than him. Besides, he believes his father only fought battles, and the people adored him. Lucilla explains it's because the people love victories, even if they aren't involved, as they're more invested in Rome's greatness. This prompts Commodus to study the model of the Colosseum. The next day, a senator learns that the gladiator games will be extended for 150 days to sway the people's opinion of the emperor. Gracchus notes that this might work since the people are easy to distract. Meanwhile, the gladiators are getting ready for battle, and Proximo tells the Spaniard to focus on giving a show instead of quick kills, since his role there is to entertain. The gates swing open, and only the Spaniard steps out to fight, quickly taking down all his opponents and telling the crowd, "This is what you wanted." Later, Proximo pulls him aside, saying that while his tactics may work here, Rome won't embrace his combat style. He adds that the emperor plans to host games just like his father did, so they'll soon be heading to the Grand Colosseum. Proximo then shares a secret. He was once a gladiator himself, and one day, Emperor Marcus Aurelius gifted him a rudius, a wooden sword symbolizing his freedom. The Spaniard leans in and tells Proximo he also wants to get close to the emperor. Proximo encourages him, saying that to do so, he'll need to make the people adore him. Smiling, he tells him he'll have many adventures ahead. Days later, they arrive in Rome, marveling from a distance at the majestic architecture of the Colosseum. Before leaving them, Proximo reminds the Spaniard to win over the crowd. Meanwhile, as Commodus sleeps, Lucilla meets with Gracchus and learns that her brother is so fixated on these games that he's neglecting his duties. He's even sold grain reserves and imposed new taxes to fund the festival, but no one dares to speak out against him, as it would likely lead to a death sentence in the Colosseum. As long as the people support him, their hands are tied, but when the majority finally turn against him, they'll strike. Soon, the gladiators head to the Colosseum, where women rush over, eager to touch them. Proximo hears that the emperor wants his gladiators killed in the games, so he demands more money from Cassius, saying that this wasn't part of their deal. Cassius shrugs and tells him to walk away if he doesn't like it. Moments later, while the gladiators wait, young Lucius approaches the Spaniard and tells him everyone speaks highly of him, adding that his uncle brings him to watch the games to make him strong. Not long after, the gladiators arm themselves and prepare to go out. The commander tells them that as soon as they enter the arena, they're to greet the emperor and never turn their backs on him, wishing them an honorable death. The gladiators march out and line up in the arena, all greeting Caesar except Maximus. Cassius announces they'll be reenacting the fall of Carthage, with the gladiators playing the role of barbarians. As he continues speaking, Maximus quietly asks if any of them served in the army. Discovering that nearly all of them did, and that one even served under his command, he tells them they must work together if they want to survive and win. Suddenly, a group of chariots races toward them. Maximus quickly gives orders, and the gladiators form a protective shield wall. In a coordinated move, they take down the first chariot. Though Hagen is injured, Maximus saves him, and soon they're dismantling each chariot one by one. Maximus seizes control of a horse and turns the tables, allowing the remaining gladiators to finish off the surviving enemies. Commodus, watching from the stands, asks Cassius about the warrior known as the Spaniard and demands to see him. Soldiers enter the arena, and a legionary approaches the Spaniard, relaying that the emperor wants to meet him. Moments later, Commodus steps out, and as Maximus bows, he discreetly picks up a broken arrow, but stops short when he sees Lucius watching. The emperor orders him to remove his helmet and introduce himself, but the gladiator refuses, turning his back on him. Infuriated, Commodus insists, and in the movie's most epic moment, Maximus finally takes off his helmet, revealing his name, recounting his battle history, declaring his loyalty to Marcus Aurelius, his family's death, and his thirst for vengeance. Commodus is stunned, as is Quintus, who signals the soldiers to be ready to kill. But the crowd rallies behind Maximus, forcing Commodus to spare him to stay in the people's favor. Lucilla, watching from afar, is overjoyed to see Maximus alive. Later, Commodus confronts Lucilla, admitting he's insulted that Maximus survived and asks how she felt seeing him. She responds coldly, claiming she felt nothing. Lucilla meets with Maximus, who accuses her of being involved in the conspiracy that killed his family. She denies it, revealing she's lived in fear of her brother since that day and dreads her son inheriting the throne. She tells Maximus that he's more powerful than the emperor because of the people's love, urging him to join the resistance. Maximus, however, declines, saying he could die at any moment, and asks her to leave. The next day, Cassius introduces a powerful fighter, the Tiger of Gaul, as Maximus enters the arena, visibly angry, convinced Marcus Aurelius wouldn't have allowed such savage games. Among the spectators, Cicero watches him fight. Suddenly, a trap is sprung, and tigers are released. One pounces on Maximus, but he fends it off and kills it. Maximus overpowers the champion but refuses to kill him, despite the cries of the crowd and the emperor's command. Rather than making him less popular, his mercy only makes the people love him more. Moments later, guards enter, surrounding Maximus, and then Commodus arrives, challenging him to attack. When Maximus doesn't, Commodus taunts him by talking about his family. Maximus simply turns and tells him his time for honor is coming to an end. As he leaves, Cicero catches up with him and says that his battalion still doesn't know all that's happening, handing him a small bag. Maximus asks him to find his soldiers and tell them their general is still alive. Opening the bag, Maximus finds the figures of his wife and son, and he prays for them. The next day, Commodus grows increasingly unstable, seeing how the people support Maximus. He realizes that if he kills him, Maximus would become a martyr. Commodus is also confused by the Senate's sudden compliance, suspecting they're plotting something, so he orders Falco to keep an eye on each senator. Days later, Cicero tells Maximus his soldiers are ready to fight for him. Maximus sends a message to Lucilla, agreeing to meet with the senator. Later, he meets with Lucilla and Gracchus. Maximus, now trusting Gracchus, asks for help leaving Rome to reunite with his soldiers and return to fight. Gracchus hesitates, worried that bringing soldiers into the city after a century could risk a dictatorship. Maximus assures him that once their mission is complete, he'll leave the soldiers to guard the Senate, honoring Marcus Aurelius' vision. Gracchus agrees and promises to secure his freedom within days. The next day, Proximo notices strange men watching him, while Gracchus sends a messenger with money for Maximus' freedom. Hours later, Proximo meets with Maximus, worried about freeing him, as the emperor already knows too much. But Maximus reassures him, saying he'll pay for his return and asks him to trust him. The next day, the Praetorians arrest Gracchus, and hours later, Commodus deceives his sister by saying the senator was detained for being with another woman, and that the Senate will soon disappear. He then lays her down, declaring his love, while Lucilla pretends to love him too before leaving. The next day, Lucilla finds Maximus, telling him Gracchus was arrested. She says Cicero will wait for him that night to help him escape. She also confesses her love for him, and they share a kiss. Later, Lucilla finds Commodus telling her son stories about past emperors. Seeing her, he implies that Lucius told him about her plans, threatening to destroy everything she loves. Hours later, soldiers arrive at Proximo's quarters, banging on his door. Instead of letting them in, he goes to Maximus, giving him the keys and telling him he's free. However, the soldiers manage to break in as Maximus gathers the gladiators to resist them and escape. Moments later, Proximo is killed by soldiers, while Maximus puts on his armor and heads into the tunnels to escape. His friend Hagen is killed during the fight, but Maximus makes it to the exterior, spotting Cicero tied up with a noose around his neck. The next day, Senator Falco informs Commodus that his orders were carried out, and Commodus ponders whether to punish or spare his sister and nephew for their betrayal. He then confronts Lucilla, saying that any hint of rebellion will lead him to kill Lucius. Hours later, Quintus approaches Maximus, who is now imprisoned. Hearing the people chant his name, Quintus tells Maximus he's only following orders as a soldier. Maximus, looking at him, says that anyone destined to endure will survive. Moments later, Commodus arrives, watched by Juba, some surviving gladiators, and Gracchus. Facing Maximus, Commodus says he'll give him a glorious death by fighting him in the arena, secretly stabbing him to put him at a disadvantage. Moments later, Commodus walks into the arena with his soldiers, and Maximus, barely able to stand, lifts his sword to fight the emperor. Despite his weakened state, he fights back fiercely, wounding Commodus. Losing his weapon, Commodus demands a sword from Quintus, but Quintus orders the soldiers to stand down. Then, Commodus draws a hidden dagger, attempting to kill Maximus, but Maximus overpowers him, driving the dagger into him, silently watched by the crowd. Now, on the brink of death, Maximus sees visions of his home and asks Quintus to free his men and reinstate Gracchus in the Senate. Quintus complies, and Maximus collapses, reuniting with his family. Lucilla then addresses everyone, asking that Maximus be honored, and others carry him from the Colosseum, and Juba, later, buries the figures of Maximus's wife and son, saying he'll see him in eternity. That was Gladiator. Subscribe and stay tuned for more releases coming soon.